We are talking about the ultimate house hack, the way that you can buy a single family home, even as a first-time home buyer, and build up to 3 units. Now, every state is different, but now Washington State allows you to build up to 2 additional ADUs. California allows up to 4 total units. Many states and cities are allowing the addition of units to be built. Why are we interested in building? Why not just buy a multi-family, unit like a duplex or a triplex, and then the rental income can help us pay for that? Well, the answer is those are short in demand, and if you do find one, they're very expensive. Conversely, by building is 1/3 of the cost of buying right now. So while this is not a good measure, if you buy in a major city, you're typically buying at $800 to $1,000 per square foot. If you're building anywhere between $200 to $400 per square foot. It's just a lot cheaper. So with that, we're going to talk about how to buy and build with very little money using your mortgages and first-time homebuyer opportunities to do everything in one low monthly tax-deductible mortgage payment. So we're going to talk about California because it's a little more complex. California and other states are upzoning the entire properties. In California, any single family zone property that is owner occupied may have a second house, which we lovingly call an SB9 unit after that legislation. It is a house. Minimum square feet on this SB9 unit is 800 square feet, and it has to be built to fire codes with separate utilities, etc. SB9 is not just about lot splits. You can add a second house. The program also allows you to build 2 ADUs on a single family zone property as well. Typically, one has to be attached to the primary house, but not always. Depends on the city. And that's usually a front garage conversion, and the maximum is 500 square feet. Every city is different. And then the other ADU can be detached. What's important to understand about this is that the mortgage guidelines do not match with the permit guidelines. All the folks back in Washington, Fannie Mae, FHA, et cetera, are going, what is this whole ADU movement across the United States? And so what the term ADU, first of all, it means accessory dwelling unit, i.e. a granny flat, a pool house, a companion unit, but typically something that is not rentable. And that's important because we're often not allowed to factor in future rental income on ADUs in the same way we would if we were adding a duplex. Appraisal values are also lower. And finally, and in my opinion, most important, when you don't have equity, i.e. you're purchasing with 3% down or 5% down, the construction loans only allow you to build 1 ADU. So we have a workaround that we're going to talk about on that, where we can get you to the full 4 units. You do need to be thoughtful about the type of house that you have, because it's not just about building. Sometimes it's about splitting up houses and so on. And SB9 units and ADUs can look and feel the same. In this example, this person has raised the entire house, and this is the primary house. This is the SB9 unit. This is the ADU. This is an ADU. They all look and feel the same. It's how they are zoned. So you need to learn more about that from your city and so on. This person has built a second house in the back, added an attached ADU. There's all sorts of different ways to skin this cat, so to speak. So what does a unit cost? Typically, carving out units from an existing attached space costs a lot less. Typically, for example, a garage conversion is about $100,000. Now, I've seen them as low as $50,000 per month, but I've also seen them as high as $125,000. Conversely, the detached units end up tending to cost a lot more. In Southern California and inland areas, those costs are as low as $175,000. Construction materials have really dropped down to pre-pandemic prices, so we're pretty excited about that. But in the Bay Area and more expensive cities, $250,000 is a baseline price, and more likely it's going to be $300,000 or $350,000. So regardless of that, look at this rental income. So $100,000 at today's high interest rates is about $650 a month for every $100,000. Next year, Fannie Mae is projecting that interest rates will go back down actually in 8 to 12 months. So, and they're projecting 4.3%. At that price point, it's $420 per 100,000. But even at today's high rates, the rental income is just so much higher, as those of you renting know. $250,000 is going to be about $1,237, and look at those rental rates. Pretty amazing. If you don't believe me at how high rents are, I strongly recommend this methodology. Do not look at apartment rents. Do not look at Rentometer. ADUs rent for $300 to $400 a month higher than an apartment. And if you think about it, what would you prefer? Would you rather live in a little box where you can hear everything that your neighbor says? Or would you rather live in a brand new custom built, what feels like a single family home? Maybe you have a little yard to yourself, front door, porch, those types of things. So look on Zillow for rents, exclude apartments, and then take a look at which bedrooms go for more. What's the average? And we're going to optimize the design on that property for the rent if you're using this for rental income. Some people assume that you need to build a huge 3-bedroom, 1,200 square foot ADU in order to optimize rent. In fact, what I am finding is that for just the space of a 2-bedroom unit, you can have a 1-bedroom ADU and a 1-bedroom ADU. I call it an ADU duplex. And that will typically rent for a minimum of $2,200 a piece. So that's $4,400 for the total, compared to a 2-bedroom unit, which will sometimes rent for $3,500 or $3,800. So the 2 1-bedrooms for the same space as a 2-bedroom is going to be a lot more. But every neighborhood is different, and we're going to take a look at your own neighborhood and what that might look like. So how do we pay for this? Well, loans are just tools, and each phase of our journey has a different loan. Step number 1, is just typically a flat purchase. And particularly since interest rates are high today, I want to do a flat purchase because we can use something to temporarily buy down the interest rate. We often use a 2-1 buy down, which is a credit from the seller, to buy down the interest rate by 2% in the first year and 1% in the second year. That gives you a nice low monthly payment while we're waiting to start designs and permits on the ADU. Then we use a renovation or construction loan to rehab the primary house and the ADU, although we do have purchase and rehab the primary house as part of the first loan, so we can do that. Finally, when all the build and all the remodeling is done and rates are down, we offer a complimentary refinance into that classic low interest 30-year fixed rate. Construction loans and cash flow loans are often not the same. Renovation and construction loans are typically a higher interest rate because they're risky. So about 60% of my clients do that, and we offer that lifetime guarantee on the loan. So once you do the purchase loan, any future refinances are complimentary. We have a flat lender fee of $1,540. There's no origination fees, no points, things like that. And we'll just freshen up your file and get you that nice low rate. So let me sort of walk you through the logistics in 2 different ways. First step is you're going to buy. Preferably, you're going to buy a house, and we'll look at these options, with a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet and an attached garage, because as we discussed, your highest return on investment is that attached garage. not a detached. Then we're going to use a construction or renovation loan to renovate the garage into a room conversion. Note, I'm not saying a junior ADU, because these loans only allow for the construction of rooms, additional room space, and any rehab on the primary house, and the construction of one ADU back here, one ADU as big as you can get it. Then you're going to get your final permit, certificate of occupancy for the one ADU and the room conversion, and my appraisers and the lenders go home. Now you're going to go back, you're going to wall off this unit here. So you have two separate ADUs here. That's my ADU duplex. And we're going to re-permit those. This is the SB9 unit. This is the ADU. And we're going to re-permit this as the junior ADU. That is the workaround when you're working with construction and renovation loans to get this whole process done. This is another timeline. So we are here at the loan purchase pre-approval, and interest rates are high, but they're coming down over time. Like I said, in about 8 months, Fannie Mae is projecting will be at 4.3%. So first step is always loan pre-approval. And then once we have that, we often like to pre-underwrite you, which allows us to close as quickly as 10 days on your purchase. Once you're done with the purchase, you move in and you start the construction HELOC process. I'll tell you about that. But really what you're doing is you're starting the design process. Designs on ADUs and the remodeling typically takes about 3 months. And then you submit for permits. These 3 months cost about $10,000 typically. On our HELOCs, that's about $80 per month at today's rates, and it's already starting to come down to about $70. Then you're going to start permits. Permits take about 6 months. It's really, you cannot get a detailed general contractor bid until you know what your designs are. There's lots of questions. The GCs can guess, but there's lots of questions they're going to have about the designs that they just don't know. Once you get your permit back and you start construction, this is really where you're going to spend the majority of money on a HELOC or your renovation loan. So if you do a HELOC, you could start here and you'll have all the funds through this whole process. Alternatively, you could, if you have cash, I would recommend at least $20,000, but potential for $40,000 for designs and permits. We can do a renovation refinance to finance the construction. Either way, we want to finance 100% of construction, because the only cash down that we want to put is maybe 3 or 5% down on the purchase. We'll finance everything else on this construction. Finally, you've finished the first phase of construction and you're going to potentially rent that, or at least get rid of the loan folks. We're going to get you a nice classic rate and term refinance to fix that into the 4.3%. Then when the loan people go home, you're going to re-permit the 2 units, and so the 2 additional units, the junior ADU and the SB9 unit. So now you're renting all 3 units. When you get pre-approved, we're going to give you an example like this. Here's going to be the purchase mortgage. Here's going to be the renovation mortgage. And here is the final refinance. So you can see, not only is this person's buying a duplex, they're using a renovation purchase loan to rehab the duplex and expand it. And then they're adding the second renovation refinance to add the big ADU in the back, and then a final refinance. So at each stage, at the very beginning of this entire process, we get you pre-approved so you know what your cash flow is going to look like and what potential costs there might be that we need to prepare for. Also, we get you pre-approved in advance so we know what the construction budget is. I've seen people go out and, design this huge fancy castle only to realize that they're not qualified to build that whole amount. So we want to find out, get you pre-approved first, and then you're going to build to that budget. There's also ways to help ensure that you are fully qualified. And the key thing is staying within the sweet spot of loan limits. For Fannie Mae, FHA, Freddie Mac, these are the loan limits in the counties. And when you get above that, it becomes very difficult and costly to finance the construction. So staying well beneath these loan levels really makes a huge difference. And what we're doing is we're calculating backward. And by the way, when I say loan limit, it's loan limit or what you're pre-qualified for. So here's what you're doing. The purchase loan amount, not the purchase price, the purchase loan amount subtracted from your approved amount or loan limit, that equals the construction budget. That tells us how much money you're qualified to buy. So let me give you an example. Single family home in San Diego County, the loan limit is $977,500, and let's assume that's what you're qualified for. But let's say you buy something much smaller, $650,000 purchase price, 5% down on that is just $32,500. That's all the cash I want you to spend. Everything else can be financed. That gives us a purchase loan amount of $617,000. So here's my total amount I'm approved for. Subtract the $617,000 from the $977,000, and that gives us $360,000 in construction budget to build. So now we know what we're qualified to build for, and we can go to the contractor and say, okay, what can we build for this? So I'm kind of working backwards right up front in the pre-approval. Now, I'm sure you're asking, what the heck, how can I qualify for that if, based on, how do you do that? I'm not going to have, with 5% down, I'm not going to have enough equity to do a loan. Well, this is what's very different about construction and renovation lending. Have you ever wondered how, if somebody's building a custom house, how does a loan work? Like, how do you build to that because there's no current equity? And the answer with construction renovation lending is that we lenders who specialize this, we send the appraiser out with the pretty architectural designs and permits, and he looks at the current property and he says, oh, I see what you're going to do. Let's say you're going to remodel this garage. And when you do, it will be worth much higher. So this is not every bank does renovation and construction lending. In fact, most banks don't do that, and construction units almost universally do not do these. So it's easier to say, I'm sorry, you're not qualified. You don't have high enough appraisal value or equity in your house, but we specialize in this. So let's say the appraiser gave a current value on this house of $700,000. Our home equity lines of credit go based on current value, go up to 95% of current value. Well, if you just bought this house with a purchase loan amount of $600,000, that only gives us $65,000 cash available. That's not nearly enough to build what we want to build. But we have a construction HELOC that's based on 125% of future value. So let's say the appraiser gave us a lowball appraisal of only $800,000. And that will happen with ADUs. We're the only bank that I'm aware of out there that has trained ADU appraisers on ADUs. And that's a huge difference in what we do. But let's say we get a lowball of value. By being able to lend up to 125%, that now gets us your approved loan limit up to $1 million, subtract the purchase loan amount, and that allows $400,000 in potential construction money available. So this is what we're working backwards from when we get you pre-approved. What's different about a lot of renovation lending is that Fannie Mae requires us to have construction oversight. Construction's very risky for banks. We have the same worries that you do. Is the contractor going to do the work right? Are they going to take off with money? And the way that Fannie Mae requires banks to do that is they have a certified independent inspector who's certified by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, hence known as a HUD inspector. And it's his job to oversee construction, and he's the one who authorizes payment from the bank to the contractor if you use these types of loan. The construction HELOC does not have construction oversight. I find the HUD inspectors very, very helpful. I don't know about you, but when I walk into a mechanic or a contractor, they look at me and say, oh my gosh, this woman obviously has no idea what she's talking about. How can I fleece her? So I bring my favorite HUD inspector when I'm buying a house or doing any construction work. And he's the one who says, okay, this is what I can see needs to be fixed. No, that bid from the contractor is too high, or no, he hasn't done it right, buddy, you got to fix it. And he's the bad guy, not me. So that prevents you from being taken advantage of. While you're at it, you're doing these renovations, doing this big loan, do rehab on the primary house. Especially if you're getting ready to retire, I encourage you to do a 50-year roof. If you don't have to add a meter to the ADUs, add solar. You can increase the rental income to cover the cost of utilities, and now your renter is paying for utilities. I have one guy who went out and bought an electric vehicle, and he likes to joke that his renters are paying for his gas as well. We also, for investors, we have a construction bridge loan. This is a whole different ball game, similar to hard money, but it's interest only. It is a refinance, and it's a little more complicated. So we'll talk about that another time. Now, I'm hearing all the time, where am I going to find a $650,000 ADU perfect house? I see them all the time. Look at this house. This is the perfect ADU single family home. See how this attached garage has the same foundation as the primary house. The detached units typically don't have that. This is a 6-inch pour with reinforced rebar. The detached garages typically have a 4-inch pour with no rebar, which is why they have a ton of cracks in them. Also, the roof and the roof trussing is the same as the primary house. So that pretty much tells me that this is not going to have to be re-roofed or retrussed. An ADU amateur would just simply slap in a door here, which will make it super awkward as you walk out in the front yard. An ADU professional would put a door here or even here. This is actually on the market today, same with this one, and they have nice space in the backyard. You're looking for an attached garage with a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet. That's what you're looking for to buy on a single family home. On a duplex, you can factor in the future rental income of the other rental property, and duplexes by state law are allowed to have 2 ADUs, no SB9 units, but 2 ADUs. My construction loans only allow me to have 1, but we've talked about that workaround. So look at the potential monthly payment and monthly rent. So similar approach, but I would personally rather have a newly built construction ADU or SB9 unit than something existing and old and not as nice. Definitely not as nice, but it's doable. So tips and tricks: get pre-approved first, run the numbers, and then you can go shopping and design what you want to do. I will know I see construction bids across my desk all day long, even though, God forbid, I swing a hammer. The construction bids are pretty much all the same. It's the cost of materials and the cost of labor. Usually they are dollar for dollar the same, except in high cost labor markets like San Francisco. Plus, there is a 15% markup. That's the profit margin for the GC. They're all the same pretty much. If you're getting a dramatically lowball bid, that's what worries me, because that's a contractor who either doesn't know what they're doing, or they're deliberately lowballing you, and they're going to come back to you either way for $25,000, $50,000. That makes me crazy as a banker. The black hole of lending is a half-built house. No bank wants to touch a house under construction because they have no idea what's been done, what's happening, the quality of construction, nothing. So at that point, it's a huge issue. I have one client who I couldn't get qualified. She put construction on 5 huge credit cards, and there's nothing I can do to save her. She's going into bankruptcy. It's a huge problem. Also, I have another client who had a buddy who worked in commercial construction. He laid down the foundation and started working. Turns out he was building to commercial codes, not residential codes. They're having to tear the entire thing down and start all over again. Huge issues. So work with people who know what they're doing. Next steps. I strongly recommend, that you, I'll put this in the chat, but schedule time. I'm frankly pretty hard to reach by phone. But you can schedule a strategy session with me at calendly.com, and we can start to go over. And then we're going to get you pre-approved and apply, and we'll go from there.